All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone, to this session of our Inside IUI Global webinars. I am going to go live on Instagram. Hopefully that worked. There we go. All right. I think we are live for our webinar this morning. Welcome, all of our attendees. My name is Kelly Sumner. I am the Director of International Admissions at IU Indianapolis. And I'm so delighted that you could join us today. It is very early in the morning on a Saturday here in Indianapolis. But I know we probably have folks joining us from all around. If you would like to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining from, it's always interesting to see what countries we have represented in our webinar attendees. I'd also just like to thank Todd and Carrie for joining this morning and sharing with us about web development. We're looking forward to hearing from them here in a few minutes. I'll just give sort of a quick overview of what this webinar will be all about. So I'm going to start and do a brief presentation about IU Indianapolis. I'll go over some information about our campus, the programs that we offer, our location, which is one of our biggest assets, and some information about how you can apply. So that'll be about the first 10 minutes or so. And then I'm going to turn the stage over to Todd and Carrie, and then we're going to get into the really exciting stuff that I know you are all here to learn about today about web development. And then after their presentation, we will have some time for Q&A at the end. So I see some people are introducing themselves in the chat. I already see somebody from Nepal, Kenya, Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us. In the chat, we will be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation. So please feel free to type any questions that you have into the chat. We do have a colleague, Allie, from the Luddy School, who is behind the scenes, who can help answer questions in the chat. But then, like I said, after Todd and Carrie's presentation, we'll do a Q&A on screen. So if you have questions about web development, about any of the things they present, you can type those in the chat, and then we will have them answer those questions at the end. All right. Oh, let me say one more thing before I get started. Just another little housekeeping note. If you've registered for the webinar in StreamYard, then after the webinar, probably Monday or Tuesday at the latest, you're going to get a certificate of participation sent to your email address you used when you registered. If for some reason it gets to be Tuesday or Wednesday and you haven't seen that email yet, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll make sure that we get that sent to you. All right, so all those housekeeping notes I think are taken care of. So we'll just jump right into a little bit of information about Indiana University, Indianapolis. So for some of you, you may not already be familiar with our campus, but it is kind of going through an interesting time right now. So we currently and previously have been known as IUPUI, but we are going through a name change, a little bit of a switch on our campus, and we're becoming IU Indianapolis. So our campus has actually been here in the city of Indianapolis for the last 54 years, and we're kind of reinventing ourselves now. Instead of IUPUI, we'll be known as IU Indianapolis. We are a large public research institution. So we've got more than 30,000 students on campus. We're super proud of the fact that we have 7.4% of our student population is international. That's actually a record this year for the largest percentage of our student population being international. So obviously, as the international office, we like that statistic quite a bit. Our international students are a fairly diverse group. We have over 100 countries represented. And even though we are a large campus, we do have a good student-faculty ratio, and many of our classes are small classes. So 75% of the classes on campus have 30 students or less. So even though it's a large campus, you'll still have some good opportunities in the classroom to get to know your classmates, to get to know your faculty, as well as outside of the classroom in our campus activities and in the community of Indianapolis. So we are very well known for programs in STEM. Our campus is considered the Life and Health Sciences hub for IU. So a lot of health science programs on our campus, as well as nursing school, medical school, and a dental school. So lots of things related to healthcare. We also have our Kelly School of Business. Our faculty members joining us today are from the Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering. So we really are a comprehensive university, and we have programs all across the board. Whatever you're interested in, we probably have a program that would work for you. We have some other good statistics to boast about. A lot of students on our campus do take advantage of internship opportunities while they're studying. The Luddy School is definitely no exception. One of the great things about studying at IU Indianapolis is we are located in downtown Indianapolis, right in the city. And so the opportunities for students to get that professional experience are right in our backyard, and that's a really great asset to all of our students. The city of Indianapolis is a large city. It's about the 15th or 16th largest city in the US, depending on the year and exactly how you calculate the numbers. It's not quite as big as like a New York or Los Angeles. It's centrally located, and the area, the Midwest part of the US, tends to be a little bit of a lower cost of living compared to like the East Coast or the West Coast. So there's a lot of great advantages of coming to Indy. I mentioned that we have a lot of programs to choose from. We do offer both undergraduate and graduate level programs. One thing I always like to point out, even if you're a high school student thinking about going to university for your first bachelor's degree, we do have a lot of great options for students who are interested in doing an accelerated bachelor to master's degree programs. And quite a few of those are in our Luddy School as well. So those are programs where instead of spending 4 years on a bachelor's and then 2 years on a master's, you could actually do that all together in 5 years. So that's something to kind of think about as a great option. My office, the Office of International Affairs, we are dedicated to supporting international students and global learning across campus. And we have some great resources for international students once they arrive on our campus. So we have an orientation and welcome services students participate in when they first join us. We also have a very fantastic peer mentoring program that we offer to international students. So when you first start on campus, you're matched up with a peer mentor. They're international and US students as well, to kind of help you get acclimated to campus, make sure that you're aware of all the campus resources, fun activities, and things going on, and just to kind of have that first built-in friend right away when you join campus. And then it's also actually a great campus employment opportunity for you. If you really enjoyed your experience being mentored, then you can become a mentor yourself and welcome new students each semester to our campus. So it's a pretty neat program. They put on a lot of different programming and events and things in our office as well. You can see our campus in this picture is right downtown. So you can see some of the skyline of Indianapolis there in the background. The quote from our Peer Mentor of the Year from 2023 here is talking about how they really appreciate not just the diversity of campus, but also the diversity that you'll find in Indianapolis. And I think that's another advantage of going to school in a larger city. You do get a lot of diversity. We have people from all over here in the city of Indianapolis, and it's a pretty welcoming environment. We have a phrase we like to say, Hoosier hospitality. So Hoosiers are people from Indiana, and Hoosier hospitality is just kind of showcasing the fact that we are very welcoming, friendly. Sometimes people have the impression that people in big cities are maybe not so friendly, but I think that's definitely not the case in Indianapolis. So both the city community and the campus community are very welcoming. And all of our students report that it does make it a lot easier for them to adjust and transition because everybody is so friendly when they arrive. Indianapolis is known as Indy. So that's an abbreviation you'll probably hear quite often. Like I mentioned, it is the capital city of the state of Indiana. You can kind of see there's a couple of little maps on here showing that quite a few of the main attractions, business districts, things like that are within even the 15 to 30-minute walk from campus, a shorter drive. Everything's very accessible. We do have a lot of opportunities for students to do fun recreational kinds of things in the city, as well as opportunities for things like internships. So if you happen to be into sports, for example, we are definitely a large sports city. Right now, we're hosting some of the NCAA college basketball playoff games. We have all kinds of professional and semi-professional sports going on in our city, as well as on campus. We do have collegiate level sports at IU Indianapolis as well. If you're not into sports, we have lots of other things in the city. So within walking distance of campus, you can get to museums, you can get to the zoo. There's some nice walking and biking trails. We're turning out to be a pretty nice foodie city. There's a lot of restaurants around from all different types of cuisine. We do experience all 4 seasons. So if you're from someplace that is a little bit more of a warm climate, you will get to experience cold weather and snow in Indianapolis, but we do also get nice and warm in the summer as well. Our total cost to attend IU Indianapolis for 1 year is right around $52,000. That includes your tuition, your room and board, books and supplies, health insurance, and all those costs. So that's what we refer to as our I-20 cost for international students. We do offer scholarships to help bring that cost down for you. I'll talk a little bit about those here in a second. We do offer 2 different intakes. So we admit students both in the fall, which starts in August, and in the spring, which starts in January. The August intake is probably the biggest and most popular time. More students start in August. And that is also when we offer our scholarships. So students who apply to January, we do not offer scholarships for those students, just for the ones that start in August for our first year undergraduate students. So that's something to keep in mind. Our scholarships that we offer at the time of admission are based on your high school grades and your English proficiency, and they range from $5,000 to $10,000 per year. You don't have to do anything extra for those scholarships. You're just going to submit your application, submit your high school grades, English proficiency, and when we review your file for admission, we will automatically give you the scholarship. So that's kind of nice. The deadline to be considered for scholarships is February 15th. So if you're currently in your final year of high school, you haven't applied yet, but you're thinking you might like to come for August, unfortunately, you have missed that scholarship deadline, but you haven't missed the admission deadline. So we'll still keep accepting applications up until May 1st for our August start students. If you are not in your final year of high school, maybe you're in 11th grade or 10th grade, or you're thinking about taking a gap year, you will be able to start applying for fall 2025 starting in August. And then you should have plenty of time to meet all these deadlines, including the scholarship deadline. So if you are thinking about applying, you can apply using either the Common App or you can apply on our website. All you'll need to apply is to fill out the application. You'll submit your official academic records, so your high school transcripts or exam results, proof of English proficiency. We'll accept TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo. Those are probably the most popular ones. We do not require SAT or ACT scores, so we are test optional. If you've taken the SAT, you can submit it as proof of your English proficiency, but you don't have to submit it. It is absolutely not required. After we determine your admission, if you do need an F1 student visa, then we will ask you for your financial documentation so we can get your I-20 out to you. And that's what you need to take to the embassy for your visa interview. So that's the process in a nutshell. We are always happy to answer questions. We're going to help you through the process. Anything you need from us, my team and I are here to help you throughout the entire process, from the time that you're thinking about applying and you have questions all the way through to when you actually show up on campus to start classes. Up on the screen here, I have a couple of things. There's a QR code that goes to our link tree. And the link tree is just kind of a place where you can easily find links to what we think are super helpful resources, links to certain places on our website. Scholarship information is there. Our social media links are there. So feel free to check that out. You can also email us directly at iapply@iu.edu. And I can put that in the chat also a little bit later if you want to copy that down. That comes directly to my team. So any questions that you have about IU Indianapolis, about the application process, please feel free to reach out. We love to talk to students. We can chat over email. We can set up a one-on-one Zoom call, whatever we can do to help you through the process and make sure you get your questions answered. We would be happy to do that. So that is the end of my song and dance. I'm going to take that off the stage here. And so now for the main event, I'm going to turn the screen over to Todd and Carrie. Todd Shelton and Carrie Rector are two of our faculty in our Luddy School, and they're going to talk about web development today. So I'm definitely not a super tech savvy person. I don't know a whole lot about web development, so I'm actually looking forward to learning along with all of you a little bit more about the program that we offer, the courses that you would take if you were studying web development at IU Indianapolis, and also like what kind of scope there is for that. What kind of careers could you possibly study web development for your undergraduate degree? So I will let them do a little more introduction and kind of take it away, Todd and Carrie.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome. Is this the right one, Todd? Are you?
Yep, I think we're on.
That looks good. That's great. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm Todd Shelton, and we'll get into this, I guess. But we're going to be talking about web design and development in our School of Luddy. It's a long title for our school. It just changed. So like Kelly was saying, there's a lot of changes on our campus right now. So it's changing over to just IUI. And with that, our school is kind of rebranding. So it used to just be School of Informatics, and now it's Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering. So it's getting a lot bigger. So let's just jump right in, and we'll talk about some of the faculty that's in our program. So again, I'm Todd Shelton. I'm in Media Arts and Science. It's a program within our school. We have several different departments are in our school. We are located in the Human-Centered and Computing department. I like to consider our program kind of the fun part of the program, because we have web development in our program, but we also have 3D and virtual reality and gaming and things like that. So we're the ones that's really kind of the energetic, creative side of our school. So, and so that's me, and I'll let Carrie, go ahead and introduce herself.
We have some introduction slides here in a little bit, so we will go more in depth in a little bit. Yeah. But again, yeah, I am part of the web development program, or part of the MAS Media Arts and Sciences program here at Luddy. And Todd and I teach primarily most of the web courses, but we also have Skip, Louie, and Rand, who also teach a handful of classes in our program.
Yeah. Oh, went too fast. So yeah, just to introduce myself a little bit more. So I worked in the industry roughly about 7 years. So I started off in interactive media back when We had a lot of web banners on the websites, that would jump out there. It was always at the top or on the side. I made a lot of those over the years. But I also did a lot of interactive sites for companies like Verizon and KFC, which is a big kind of a fast food here in the United States. EA Sports did a lot of interactivity for. I moved out of interactive sites and moved into corporate development and got into making more corporate applications, and did that just because I wanted that experience. So I did that a lot. And then on the side, just me personally, to get away from kind of the computer side of things, I do a lot of DIY projects. I love music, and kind of the more obscure kind of thing is curling. So as most people think of it as the Olympic sport, you throw down the stone down the ice. So I've recently got into that the last couple of years, and that's what I really like to do. So one reason I got into teaching is when I went through web development as a student. I went in there as my specialization as an undergrad and as a master's. I just felt like I didn't get what I needed when I hit the industry. So I wanted to come back and share my experience and make sure that the classes that students were getting had those pieces they need so they could reach the industry. So that was my drive to start teaching and getting into that part. And so I think we push that now. So when you leave our school, at least you feel ready to get an entry-level position in our industry, which is, to me, is very important to feel comfortable to hit that area in the market. I've been teaching at Luddy for 12 years. When I first started, our school was very, very small. As a matter of fact, it just seemed like there was just a handful of us. When I say that, including staff, it just seemed like there was 30 of us. And now there's so many, I don't even know. But I will tell you that the web program and the media arts and science program is still really small. We all feel like a big family, and it's really nice that we feel like that in our program. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit more in depth. If you have any questions about that, I think we're waiting till the end to kind of let everybody ask questions, whatever they would like. So I'll move to the next slide.
All right. So again, I am Carrie Rector. I have a master's in media arts and science, and I actually have another master's unrelated in school counseling. I also worked in the industry for a number of years. So I worked for a company that made dialers and software for collection agencies, basically. But I worked on their external website, and I worked there for about 9 years, got my master's in media arts and sciences. And then I started working at IU Health, which is a healthcare organization here in Indianapolis. And I created training materials for non-physician staff over here. So did a little bit of video stuff for them, did some JavaScript, all kinds of cool interactive applications during my time there. And then after that, I started teaching full-time. So some of my interests include DIY projects also. I think once you're in programming, you like building stuff, right? So our interests are very similar, surprisingly. So DIY projects, outdoor activities, and if any of you knit, I think it's very, very similar to coding because you have to follow a pattern and there's some logic and math to it. So yeah, when I'm not programming, I still like to do like-minded stuff like knitting. So the reason I started teaching was, one, I just love being in the educational environment. I love learning. I love kind of the energy that's involved with education and learning from each other. So that's why I got into teaching. And even though I have been teaching for 14 years, this is my first year at Luddy's. Before that, I worked at Butler University, which is another university here in Indianapolis. But I came to Luddy because I really appreciate their growth mindset for our different degree programs and how we constantly strive to be kind of like the leader in the industry when it comes to preparing our students to meet the demands of the job market when they graduate. And if any of you are in any kind of programming or tech field, you know that the technology changes quite often, right? So I know back when I started, some of the programming or software that I learned like my freshman year, they no longer used in the industry by the time I graduated. So we really strive to create a program for our students so that you are, have the skills that the industry demands at that time. And that's why some of our students are one of the most sought after employees in the industry in the Indianapolis market, at least probably in other markets also.
Great.
All right. So in our web design and development program, here are some of the programming languages and frameworks that we currently teach. And the reason why I say currently teach is because, again, because we are constantly tailoring our program to meet the demands of the market. If the market changes, so will some of these. So right now you can see that we do HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This will probably never change, right? This is the basis for all web programming. But then we have a variety of JavaScript frameworks, right, and libraries. So we have jQuery, Vue, Angular, React, PHP. We've incorporated Ionic into our classes. I've used I use CodeIgniter for one of my PHP frameworks. So these are our program as it sits today, but again, this could change based on the industry demand. So that's why it says and more, because you never know how it's going to change. But we do strive to prepare you for the market when you graduate.
All right, so move on. So most people know the term full stack developer. And so like, what is that? What does that mean? And how do I become a full stack developer? So first of all, we have to come back to just learning some of that front end part. So a full stack developer is a person that can code on the front end, what we call a front end developer. And that's a person that designs and codes what a person sees on their computer screen. I'm watching myself as I talk, and I think, man, I'm really a just, I talk with my hands a lot. I got to keep them down. Sorry about that. It's funny when you watch yourself. Yeah, so we design everything. So whatever you see in front of you, that's a front end developer. And most of the time that's HTML and CSS. There are some other ways to show that, but that's really what you would use for what we teach. And then to become the full stack is a person that learns how to do things also on the back end, which for us means a database. So you will learn in our school several different ways to attach a front end to a back end or a database. So sometimes we use a database like, a relational database, which PHP is normally used for that. And then we use a NoSQL database, which is really just kind of a very fast way to get data and use that information. And when you combine the back end, the database side of things with the front end side of things, you become a full stack developer. Now, those can be different things, but usually always it's the front end, HTML and CSS, but the back end changes with different programming languages. There's so many different programming languages that deal with the back end. You have Java, you have PHP, which I already mentioned, you have .NET, you have and then you have a NoSQL, which is really just JavaScript that we reach out to services like Firebase or CouchDB or any of that kind of service to get that information. So a full stack developer is really just an industry term for a person that does the front end and back end both. You might also see some, names like, a front end engineer or a full stack engineer or application engineer. Some of those are just different titles that you might see in the industry or when you're searching for a job. But most of the time, that is really what they're looking for, is a full stack developer of some sort. So I think now we move into our classes. So this is just kind of a brief list of all of our classes, and we're just going to kind of go through these and just tell you what you might see. We got some examples from some of these classes too, that you'll see what you'll be building in there. But there's some classes that's not on this list that you have to take, as part of your general studies and just core to move through your education. So 215 is one that I teach. It's the intermediate, we call it multi-device web development. We're actually changing that name, but it's still the same thing. But it's basically just an entry level class that's really getting into HTML and CSS. That's what we focus on. It's really the front end side of things. We learn how to program for multi-devices, which is just in the title there. So, for if you want your website to be seen on a mobile device, a tablet, a laptop, a full screen computer, whatever you're looking at, we kind of show you how to develop that front end in that class. So really that's what 215 is about.
Next, we have 220, which is the class I teach. And like in the slide where we were talking about different programming languages, we talked about the basis being HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So 215 covers two of those, 220 covers JavaScript. And that is really the basis for a lot of the advanced classes because, again, those are JavaScript frameworks typically. So in this class, you learn JavaScript, and JavaScript really is what HTML and CSS is how it looks and how it's designed. JavaScript really takes that interactive piece to it. So when you click on a button, something happens, or you can change the color, or depending on something that you select, your options might change, or how you submit a form. So that interactivity between the user and the website is where JavaScript comes into play, and that's what 220 does.
Yeah. So we're going to move. I'm going to take the next two classes. So I-270 is really, it's kind of an interesting class. It breaks away from the coding side of things. And it's your first introduction to UI and UX. So if you don't know what UI and UX stands for, it's user interface, and they're not the same thing. A lot of people throw those two terms together all the time, but one's a user interface and one's a user experience. So really, what that class does is introduce you to how things should be laid out on a screen to make you think about how a user would look at your application. If you look at, for instance, when people expect to see a navigation, for most people, it's always at the top of the page, right? So, you always see that navigation at the top, and there's a reason for that. And we've, as a society, have come to get used to that, and so you will study those kind of things. And then on the user experience side of things, of how the user would feel about if you change that navigation. So it's the whole experience of that kind of, development process. One thing that it kind of is very interesting is usually in programming, there is a right brain, left brain type of thing. So most creative people are, don't understand coding, and most coding people don't understand the creative side of things. So if you take this class, I think it really helps you join together of the kind of the design process if you are a developer. So this is a much needed class. Then we move to kind of a 315 class, which builds on the 215. Now we get into advanced front end development. We start messing with a little interactivity using JavaScript, but this class really starts making what we call CRUD applications, which stands for create, read, update, and delete. So you're starting to make, by the end of the class, you're starting to make applications that interact with the database by the end, and we start creating functional applications that you would see in the industry. So at this point, when you finish this class, you could probably start getting into a little entry-level position, but you would at least have some great pieces for a portfolio that you could show.
All right, I'll take the next two classes, and numerically they're out of order. So, but I'll go ahead and take 320 first. 320 is intermediate media application development, but really this course is advanced JavaScript and an introduction to probably your first JavaScript framework, which is Vue. And so we talk about how those frameworks are built, because frameworks do add a lot of extra complexity. But just like JavaScript is a basis for all these JavaScript frameworks, once you learn one framework and understand kind of how they're built, then it's a lot easier to kind of pick up on the other frameworks that you're going to learn. So we'll do advanced JavaScript here, talking about some of the new features that came out in ES6. And then we will talk about Vue and how to do applications. In 317, this is Introduction to Programming Frameworks, and this is when we're going to talk about, this class is specifically devoted to frameworks, and we are going to do React in this one. So currently it is React. And again, when you look at some of these titles, you're going to see that we don't specifically tie one type of framework to a class. It's just Introduction to Programming Frameworks. So again, if we go out to the industry and see that there's a lot of companies that would like to use Angular instead of React, we can make that an Angular class. However, right now the industry needs is leaning more towards React. So this is an introduction to React course right now. But this will be, again, one of the top frameworks that are used by the industry. So this will prepare you for jobs when you graduate from college, and you will have a really good basis on that knowledge to be able to contribute to whatever job that you have in the future.
Okay, great. Then we move on to 322, which is our mobile development class. So even though like 215 gets into, 215 gets into the front end and starts, letting the front end side meet any media, like a laptop or phone. So what 322 will actually do is start talking about how to make an application that you can publish in one of the app stores, like Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store. We start learning how to do that, and then we start using the frameworks that she was just talking about and incorporating those into these mobile applications. Now, we don't use native language. I just want to point that out. So if some of you are really interested in mobile development, we don't use the native language for, say, Apple or Google. We actually use a hybrid language, and then we take that and move that into an application. The reason why I find that is a good process is because when you use a hybrid language, using all the frameworks and things that we use, once you develop that, you can make it for the web, you can make it into an application. So it's very fast, and companies like that because they're saving money. Now they don't have to pay a developer to write strictly an application made in native language, which would cost probably, let's say, 15 to 20,000, and then turn around and pay the same amount of money to make it for the web as well. So it saves them money, and they get the same application across every platform.
All right, 417 intermediate programming frameworks. This is where we are going to ramp up our React and make more advanced React applications. So maybe this is more use with database backend data, where we can change data, manipulate it, have it display differently. So this is just an extension of the previous React class. And again, like what Todd said, a lot of these frameworks that we use, we do use them because one of the industry demands, but two, because of that flexibility, right? We can deploy them in the Google Play Store or the Apple, and we don't have to worry about those native languages. And if you take a look at jobs and what they require, most of them do require these type of flexible frameworks knowledge for their employees. And then we have Info I-211, Information Infrastructure. So this is an advanced PHP class. So we talked about earlier how PHP is kind of this language that is able to talk to a back-end relational database. So usually a SQL database here. And so this is more advanced PHP that you will learn here. And this will start to introduce students to graphical systems programming. Then I have the next one too. I have these three right in a row. Okay. Then we have 422 Advanced Media Application Development. This course could be, we have two different numbers here. So one possibility this could be is it could be an IoT class. So talking about Internet of Things. So now we have like dishwashers and washing machines and microwaves and all of these that we can control with our mobile app, right? So we have all these kind of like gadgets that we have in our home that we can control through applications. And so those are kind of those Internet of Things. And so how do we program to where we can create that mobile application that interacts with those kind of devices? And so that would be one of those courses. Another type of course would be to do a full stack course. So in all of these, we've, Todd explain what a full stack developer is doing that front end and also that back end, communicating with that back end. So this would be taking all of that. We are designing and developing for the front end. We are developing that back end too, and creating a whole application that marries all of those together into kind of one big project.
And then I'll take the last one. 423 is a database developed for mobile applications. And the reason why this is because as we move technology, everything becomes means that most people are held inside of it, and most people use that information on a phone or a tablet, and it's getting. I just saw something the other day that it projects from a device that you wear to your hand. You know, moving all this different ways to display information. Along with that, understand how to get that data from the database to a mobile application or any other application as fast and efficient as we can. And this class talks about how to streamline that process to make sure that a user doesn't have to wait for a minute or 2 minutes, which seems very short in time, but as a user waits for a website to load, a minute is really a long time. So we start talking about how to process that information quickly. So that's a list of our classes. We just kind of wanted to give you a rundown. And that is pretty much, you would get an entire web specialization degree from Media Arts and Science with these classes. Next, I think we're going to talk about the structure and expectations of like what a classroom would be like. And, we're just going to touch on a few of those. Most of our classes are 2 hours and 40 minutes. And the reason why we do this, it seems like a long time. Yes, we do take some breaks in there. But usually when going on an application, it takes so long to like get things up and running. Like everybody's computer is a little bit different. So it's like, oh, hey, open this program up. And then next thing you know, 3 students can't get theirs running and the other can. So you have to spend time to get everybody updated. And the reason that, and then so we can move forward with those classes, and then we just don't cut it short and have to take over for another class during the week.
Typically, our classes are about 10 to 30 students. So again, when Kelly was talking about the small class sizes, again, we do have those smaller class sizes. So it allows for more personal relationships with our students. You're not in a classroom full of 200 students, and we know you by name and get to know you personally. So that's one of the benefits of coming here. As Todd mentioned just now, like sometimes we have issues with technology, and that's because all students bring their personal laptop. So they could be bringing a Windows computer, they could be bringing a Mac, a Linux, and then depending on what software they have loaded, we have to deal with that too, which is a good thing and a bad thing. A bad thing in that sometimes it takes us a little bit more effort in class. The good thing is that, we, depending on where you work, they could work with a totally different system that you're not used to, right? And so this allows us to and show you, how to work around those kind of differences when we have like different technologies or different operating systems.
Yeah. Access to all the software. One of the things that I really like about IU is the fact that they offer so much free software for you while you're a student. You have access to Microsoft, the whole suite of Office. You have Adobe products, which we have the full, subscription to that as you're a student. For us in the web, we, all the software we use, it's all free while you're a student. Most of it's free, even when you hit the industry. So that's one thing we provide you as a student. You'll have access to all of the software for free that you're going to need for that.
Okay, then we also have, along with the software, we have the use of large storage drives. So you have free access to OneDrive, which you can upload all kinds of files and allows us to share files on the web without having to deal with, downloaded files or paper. We try to be as, tech friendly as possible by using this OneDrive, so you're able to store a lot of projects there.
Yeah. The next two kind of go together. So teaching assistants, we have a lot of teaching assistants, and if you ever became a grad student, a lot of times, you can get some sort of fellowship or something like that, and you would end up maybe becoming a teaching assistant or a grad assistant. But we have a lot of those that would provide support for in and out of classroom support for you to learn. So if you're struggling with a class or anything like that, they're available for you to help. They are very experienced in what we do. So they will meet with you. They have office hours. And that moves into kind of the tutors area. For the 100 and 200 level classes that we offer, tutors are provided by the school to help you. And they have set office hours as well. So one thing I feel like that we do very well is provide that support that can help you through these classes, if you take advantage of it.
All right, and I'll take the next three, and we'll try to hurry up through these next couple of slides because I want to be mindful of the time and make sure that there is room for questions at the end. I think all of our web classes actually are project-based assignments, right? We want to make sure that you are creating projects that, one, you could use for a portfolio, and two, that are something that you would run into in the industry. So we try to create all of our projects that are project-based because that's how you would work in the industry. We provide in-class and project critiques and feedback, so you can get that feedback right away to incorporate into your upcoming projects and for your portfolio. And then you have the ability to use other labs and technologies and areas as needed on campus. So there's a ton of resources for you here.
So just real quick, just show you some examples of what you would probably work on. Here's an app that they create in classes. This is one to be a 315. It's one of those ones that we were telling you where you could create, read, update, and delete CRUD application. You create recipes. You type in here, you create a recipe, you upload an image, and you create a recipe application basically, and then you would browse the recipes that you input. So that's one application that we would do. Another one is the 215. So we focus more on what this would look like on different devices, but it is a full travel where you can book and things like that. Travel, it's all mock, so none of that data really works, but we can go through, and all of this will go on any device. So as it scales, it moves around. I'm afraid to do that. I'm not sure what happened with the presentation. So So I hate to move my screen too much. And then some of the final, especially class, students will generate their own projects. So they come up with a concept, they make the site. This was a site that a student made for banking. And you can look through, they design their own app, they develop their own app, and this includes front end and back end applications. So as you can see, this student did very well on the front end because that's what we see mostly is the front end side of things. But the development side of things that people don't really think about is this site that this person did is very functional. You can go in and create a budget and things like that. Nice. But we'll move on a little bit.
So what kind of careers could you get by being a graduate of this program? Like Todd mentioned earlier, a lot of these descriptions could be the same. Like you could have a full stack developer, could be called full stack engineer, could be called front end engineer. Like there's different titles here, but basically you have web developer, full stack developer, front end developer, mobile applications. You could also go into UI, UX designer developer jobs. You could also go into Unity developer or game developer because a lot of the languages that they use for game development are some of the languages that we use in our program. And then here are some local businesses that hire our employees and also would have internships. So while you're here, you can. One cool thing about Indianapolis is that there are a plethora of internship opportunities because we have a lot of tech companies around here. So here are some companies where our students either have internships or get employed afterwards.
Finally, we wrapped it up. So any questions?
Thank you so much, Todd and Carrie. So some of the questions I've seen so far in the chat have been kind of general application and IU Indianapolis questions. I haven't seen any questions come through yet specifically about web development, but we'll give it a few minutes. If you guys have any questions for Todd and Carrie about the classes that they teach, about any of the content that they presented in their presentation, questions related to getting internships and careers, please feel free to type those into the chat and we'll get those answered for you. I really appreciated learning a little bit more. I think I had heard the term full stack developer and wasn't 100% sure what that meant. So I feel like I learned something from your presentation for sure. Yeah. It's interesting to think about, you know, there's so much that has to happen behind the scenes for these platforms and websites and things that we interact with every day. And I also think that whole kind of human computer interaction component is really interesting, thinking about like how do you design a website so that it is user friendly? Like, what does that even mean, user friendly? And how things are laid out and how they making sure that they work with our kind of expectations. It seems like that's a really interesting aspect of this field.
Yeah. One thing
you
I
have
like
to not just
that,
understand technology, but you also kind of have to understand people, right? And how people think and how they interact with technology.
Yeah, it is very interesting. You know, it was interesting for me when I first started getting into this. It's how much a person would, how long a person stays on a web page. I found this fact interesting. If somebody searches for information on a web page and they're looking for something or Googling something, a lot of times they will only stay on a page for 3 to 5 seconds and just scan the page for the answer that they're looking for and then move on. So your website has to be very functional and also has to have the information that they need right up front. And that comes from UI and development. So it's really interesting.
That doesn't give you a whole lot of time to capture somebody's attention if they're there for 5 seconds.
Yeah. It's
yeah, that's why, like, we are primarily development, but we talk about design and we have that UI UX class because, again, if you think about it, like your site could be, the best developed website ever, but if it doesn't look good, that's the first thing that attracts somebody. So if it doesn't look good, they're going to leave, right?
Yeah.
Or opposite, right? You could have a really flashy website that looks great, but if they can't navigate it and can't get to places and do what they want to do, they're not going to be there either. So it's really like this perfect marriage between the two. And even though you're a developer, having these kind of design parts in our class allows you to talk to those designers so you know kind of what they're thinking, and designers kind of understand the development side. So it really helps you be a very good team member when you're having to deal with design and development, so you can understand both sides of a project, because both sides are very important.
Well, that was
a
great lead into the question that just popped into the chat, I think.
Yeah, I read that. So
I'm just gonna read it out just to make sure.
Okay.
Some of our platforms the chat won't show, so just so everybody knows the question. So Devyath was asking if they want to do UI or UX design or only front-end development, how code heavy would it be? Is there a way to specialize in learning only the front end with minimum to no coding?
There is a way that you could do it. Now, I will be honest, we are broke down in a way that we have web, and then you would probably want to veer more towards the informatics side of our school, which is just another program, or HCC or HCI. I mean, because they deal more in the UI and the UX things. I will tell you that, and just like you said, it's not code heavy, but it's always very good to understand code, because even as a UI and UX person, you're probably going to lay that front end out, which is what you said, and get it to look nice for the user and test it out. So there is a way in our school. You would just really have to work with your advisor to make sure they understand that's what you want, so they put you in the right path of coding. But yes, it's very possible to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great question. It sounds like maybe Devyath is leaning towards more that kind of creative kind of mindset, right? Like you said, kind of right brain, left brain kind of thinking, more on the design and creativity side, which that's great. We need people to do both things. Another question just popped in. Which programming language do you suggest for developing a website?
I would say, like, for me, if you're just wanting to learn basics, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, okay? And because, again, a lot of these frameworks are JavaScript, or frameworks of JavaScript. So I tell my students like this. It's like JavaScript is like learning Latin, right? Latin is a basis for a lot of different languages, right? So if you know Latin and you know those suffixes and prefixes, like you can pick apart the words and try to figure out what it is, even if you don't know the word right away. Same thing with JavaScript languages or frameworks. Like, you can understand frameworks if you know the basis of JavaScript. And really, when it comes down to these JavaScript frameworks, when you compile them and deploy them, they all compile down to JavaScript. So that would be what I would suggest, is HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That is kind of like a have to know kind of thing. But Todd, what is your opinion?
No, it's same. Yeah. I mean, and then you have server side languages, which is PHP. But even though you're doing PHP, which is server side, they still get rendered out. You're still going to write the HTML, the CSS, and then when you need interaction, it's JavaScript. So even though people will be like, oh, no, you can do PHP. Yeah, you can do that, but you're still going to write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You still need to understand that side of things as well. But the PHP side of things makes that full stack area, right? That's the server and the front end. So that's where you become both of those. So, yeah.
So there was a question that Ali answered in the chat from Rital, asking if there are any exams that are required to get accepted into this program. And so she said, no, all we need is English proficiency. We don't have any other exams. We don't require the SAT. But I'll kind of build off that a little bit. Like, if we have students who are interested in this program, but maybe they don't already have a background in coding, maybe they've played around with it a little bit, but they're coming in basically not knowing anything, not having taken any classes in high school, Is it possible for somebody to come in completely fresh and jump in and learn these things? And then kind of a follow-up to that, what would you recommend to a high school student? Would you recommend that they teach themselves something on the side or try to learn? Like, is there anything that they could do to kind of prepare them maybe to be in really good shape coming into a program like yours?
I'll start. So, really, because high schools in different countries can vary so much, right? Like in Indiana here, there are some high schools here that have computer science classes and web development courses, and there's some that are just too small that they can't. So for us, we teach from the very beginning as if you have no experience whatsoever, so that students don't have to feel intimidated or overwhelmed thinking that they're behind. We teach it as like, you're just interested, you know nothing, and you want to learn, and we teach from the ground up. If you have prior experience, I mean, that always helps, but it is not required for this program.
Yeah, and to build on that, a couple of things. Yeah, you can. I mean, YouTube is a great resource. If you wanted to learn some basics, you can just go out and watch some YouTube tutorials. There's some free things that you can go out and watch, and those will get you kind of ready, so you just don't jump into classes and know nothing. So if you're, that motivated to do that, you can. One thing I will say about our classes, we teach to the class. So there's some that's going to be struggling, some that's really advanced, and we teach sort of that median of that class. And I always tell all the students this: you're going to get out of a class what you put into a class. And so if you don't do anything outside of class, you're just going to get that. Here's all my assignments. That's it. However, if you really want to succeed in this industry, you're going to work on projects outside of class, and you're going to continue to learn. And we encourage that, because development in any language right now, technology is advancing so fast, especially with AI and things like that. You really need to work outside of class to make sure that you're efficient, is what I want to get at. So hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, thank you. It looks like we have one more question that popped in. I think we're at about time. So maybe this will be our last question for today's webinar. How many semesters would it take for me to be a front-end developer? And the program itself is 4 years, right? In general, students are going to spend 8 semesters or 4 years for the bachelor's degree. But it sounds like maybe after the first couple of years, students are in a good spot to get an internship, potentially in one of these kind of positions. Would you say that's accurate?
Mm-hmm. That's very accurate. Yeah, so it is a 4-year program, and depending on how you move forward through your class schedule is up to you and your advisor. However, it is planned out to be 4 years. However, Luddy does have, if we usually have enough students, I will point this out, we do have what we call a boot camp, which is a very fast-paced certificate where it is 1 semester long and it's 18 credit hours, and you can get a web certificate that way. So in 1 semester, you take all of our web classes basically, and you come out of there with a web certificate. And that kind of frees you up to take a lot more of the advanced courses or any other courses allowed on campus if that fills up. So I think we're one of the few that do some sort of boot camp like that out there. So you can progress very fast throughout our specialization, or you can move at a good steady pace too,
And one thing I do want to mention, and Todd, you're going to, since this is my first year, you have to make sure that I'm correct on this. But from what I have heard is like some of our students like land jobs even before they graduate because of like internships and things that they have done before. So like when we say our program really prepares you to get into the industry, like they look for our graduates and they will, hire you before you even graduate because you have those skills throughout the courses that we have taught.
Yeah. For our final project, it's called a capstone. It's a $4.99 class. Most people do it. One thing our school is really, and especially in our program or our specialization in web, is that we really encourage, because you can use an internship instead of a project. So you can actually, we really encourage you to go out and get an internship rather than create a project. I would rather see you get a job in the industry than just create another project that you've just did for 4 years, right? So we really push that internship wise, and that builds on that too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Todd and Carrie. I really appreciate you taking some time to present today and share all of this really useful information with us. Thank you to all of the students who joined us for the webinar today. We appreciate you taking some time to learn about IU Indianapolis and about our web development program and all of your thoughtful questions that you've shared with us this morning. So thanks again for joining. Please feel free to reach out using the email address I mentioned earlier. I'll type it into the chat one more time, iapply@iu.edu. You can probably find Todd and Carrie directly on the website for Luddy, but if you do have Luddy specific questions, you can also send those to iApply, and we will forward those to Todd and Carrie and to their colleagues to connect you with the specific information if you're looking for something from them. All that being said, we're ready to end this webinar. Thank you so much for joining. Watch your email for your certificate of participation within the next few days. And we're looking forward to hearing from you in the future, helping you through the application process. And we hope to see some of you on campus here very soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.